Hello and welcome to this game review. So after a 3-year break from over-the-board chess tournaments, I decided to try and get back into playing. So I had some videos of 3 games in the first tournament that I played on the 15th of November 2025. Those were, it was a local tournament. So at the same place a week later, they had another tournament. This one only went 2 rounds, so I'll have 2 games, one today, and the other one will be released the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll have a puzzle video if you're interested in that. So, the theme of this game is to never give up in chess. If you're behind, there's always a chance that you could come back. Now, if you're down to nothing, sometimes it's hopeless and resigning is probably the right option. But, always think about that before you give up prematurely, because if you hang in there like this game, there might be a way to come back. And if you look at the graph here, it looks like, oh wow, the game was kind of even, and then I made a mistake early in the game, and I was just behind for the whole middle part of the game, but I hung in there until my opponent made a mistake and I was able to come back. So let's see how that happened and what we can learn from it. It looks like my opponent played with 79% accuracy. I played at 82.2. Now their rating is 1084 or around there. It's still a provisional rating. So I think this player is higher rated than that. I think they play online more, and so they're trying to get used to these over-the-board tournaments. So I think Cody will be a tough player in the future. These games were already pretty tough that I've played against him. And he probably should have won this game. He played at 79% accuracy. I played at 82.2. And it says that he played at a 1650 rating level and I played at 1800, but he had 5 inaccuracies and I had 6. He had 0 mistakes, but I had 2. And he had 1 missed opportunity. So let's begin here. I'll put on the computer analysis and we'll see what we can learn from this game, which was the first round of the tournament on Saturday, the 22nd of November, 2025. So I had the black pieces. My opponent, Cody, with white, starts with e4. And I play d6, the perk defense. Now, I'm still trying to learn this opening, and I have more studying to do. So normally, they'll just take the center there, and then you can attack the unprotected pawn and they'll have to defend. But in the game, this move was played. So I developed my knight attacking the unprotected pawn. And now we have the best move played, d3, fortifying the pawn in the center. And also the bishop is outside of this pawn chain. So this bad bishop, which is blocked by pawns on the same colored squares as it, is outside of this pawn chain and aimed at this weak f7 pawn here that's only guarded by my king. All right, so the game continues with e5 here, equalizing with the pawns in the center. And Cody continues with this move, knight to c3. So if we go back at this point, it's still a perk defense, but after knight to c3, it transposes into the Vienna game. And now I play the best move, which is c6, to prevent that knight from jumping forward, or also to prevent any pieces from moving to b5. And there's also the threat of pushing here and chasing that bishop, which is what happened in the game. So we have knight to, we have knight to f3. And the computer actually likes a3 a little bit better, immediately giving that bishop a possible escape hatch. Because now, well, first I developed my bishop as well, getting ready to castle. The computer likes the immediate attack on that bishop, chasing it back, and then I would be able to push forward and threaten to trap the bishop. So the game continues with bishop to e3, also a developing move. The computer actually likes now a4 is the preferred move, which would give a slight edge to white. But at this point, after the bishop developing move, which seems good, we have an equal game. So I start attacking. The computer slightly preferred castling first, but the bishop is forced to retreat, and now we push forward. And now also the computer has other ideas, developing another piece first before I start immediately going after the bishop here. But the bishop is threatened with being trapped here. So we have the best move found by Cody. He pushes, equalizing the space on the queen side. And the best move, to give white the least advantage, is to push forward, chasing the knight here. And so after the knight retreats also to the best square, of course you don't want to go back to the starting square here. And also from here the knight could jump forward, maybe threaten to push this at some point, backed up by the knight. So I continue with castling, and now we have the knight repositioning. And here I was kind of worried about this knight jumping in here, targeting my bishop. And I don't know, this threat, it kind of made me think, all right, I need to push this pawn at some point to keep the knight out of my position here. And I didn't want to give up my bishop pair if he jumps here. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I go here, he could attack my rook, and then I would be in trouble, because if that rook moved, he could jump his other knight in and then start piling up on this pawn. And I thought I would get in trouble. So, I thought I can't push this. And I was looking at all the possible continuations. And then when I went to make my move, I forgot that I can't push that pawn, and I did it anyway. So I made a mistake here. It looks like the computer, what do they prefer? Well, not that move. C5. It looks like just pushing this pawn, locking down this dark square in the center. Also helping protect this one in case there's maybe a pawn push here. So I make this mistake, an inaccuracy. And apparently this move wasn't as bad as I thought it was. After I moved it, I was like, oh no, I remembered I shouldn't make that move. Knight at b to d7, the computer actually likes that, just developing the other knight. But after this g6 move, Cody did in fact play what I expected, and it's saying that h3 is better here. But now I thought, well, I can't move this rook, or he'll just start attacking over here with the bishop. And I thought, well, if I move this knight out of the way, it prevents his knight from coming forward. So I thought I had to move this knight. But apparently, the best move would have been, in fact, to move the rook. And if that was played, let's see what they recommend. If I go here, maybe that doesn't work. That's saying that's an inaccuracy, that castling would have been better. Now, apparently, I can just block like this with d5. So, if I block, the bishop is no longer threatening with the knight here. So, I don't know. I guess I should have taken a better look at that. And instead, we had this knight move. So this is a mistake. The best thing to do is go ahead and capture the rook for the bishop. So Cody goes ahead in material. And now what is recommended? Maybe capturing with the bishop. But I moved my queen over an inaccuracy. The bishop move would have been better, apparently. But I thought, okay, maybe if I do this, I have a battery aiming up this way. But I guess the bishop move would have been better, and then maybe the bishop could reposition here to help guard the king side. So the game continued with castling, which is best. I pushed the king up here because I wanted to get out of the line of fire of that bishop and be able to push this pawn and try and exchange pawns off. Remember, if you're down in material like this, you want to avoid peace trades and try and start trading off pawns. Why? Well, if you get rid of all the pawns and in the end, your opponent just has, like even an extra knight or a bishop, well, then there's no way to win the game if there are no more pawns left to be promoted. So we have this push here, which the computer actually likes the push in the center immediately. So I thought, well, I'll attack his bishop, try to get rid of that, but that wasn't the best move. Apparently h5, they like that better. We have an attack on my knight, so I knock out his bishop, thinking that if his queen, goes here, I could at some point attack his queen, but I didn't want to do that now because he could attack, and if I take, he takes, my bishop is under attack, I have to retreat, and then he could try and, attack here and get a pawn. So I capture in the center, which is the best move, but at this point, white has a +2 advantage. Not quite winning, but it's going to be a tough game for me. And after the recapture, he has the pawn pair in the center. So I look to exchange more pawns. First, I attack the queen, which this is a good move, but apparently knight to d7 would have been better, trying to activate this knight, which is not doing much there on the edge of the board. So capture and recapture. So here I retreat. The computer, let's see, I went here. They say that move's okay. And the game continued with rook lining up on the open file. I play this move to prevent his knight from trying to reposition, taking a square away. But, this probably wasn't the greatest move because the pawn here was covering this outpost square, keeping the knights out. Because my opponent could maybe go here immediately and just try to jump right in there. So queen and rook create a battery threatening to just capture my bishop, so I have to take care of that. I reposition to the best square, lining up on this unprotected pawn and the rook. So my opponent steps out of the line of fire and guards the pawn, but apparently it would have been better just to block that bishop here with the knight, and then that knight in the future would be set to jump into the outpost. So I push here to prevent any other forward moves by the knight, maybe with the idea of pushing this pawn in the future and threatening to fork the queen and the other knight. But now we have the knight jumping forward. Knight to e2 is actually preferred, so that's interesting. Where would the knight go? If it landed here instead, maybe it would head this way. Try to target this and this as well in the future. So I moved my king over. Oh, also there's this threat. So that's why I moved the king, because I didn't want a fork of my king and queen. The rook grabs the other open file here. An inaccuracy. It would have been better to just immediately jump in there attacking the queen. But after this move, I find the best move, preparing to jump my knight up here and block the path of the rook, also guarding this square to prevent the rook from infiltrating into the 7th rank and pinning that bishop to my king. So at this point, white has the equivalent of a little more than a 2.5 pawn advantage. And I don't know. I was thinking, man, I'm probably lost. The only advantage I have here is to keep the bishop pair, but this is a monster knight here. I'm probably going to have to give up my bishop pair to get rid of that knight. And it looks like that's probably the best move. Let's see. Yes, the computer likes that, getting rid of that knight. But after recapture, now my opponent has this monster pawn. I thought, this is going to be a terrible problem. So it looks like bishop to e7 would have been the best move, blockading the pawn, helping to defend this pawn of mine. But, that's really passive. So I decided to capture and target a rook instead, thinking maybe I can get some counterplay over here on the queen side, but that wasn't the best move. They're also saying that blockading with the queen would have been a little bit better. So now we have what? Rook up here to c6. The best move would have been to immediately push that pawn, and that's what I thought my opponent was going to do. And I thought, wow, if he plays that, I'm going to be in some serious trouble. They recommend what? Looks like queen up to f7. They're also saying queen to e8, but it would not be looking good for me after those moves. So I tried to get some kind of counterplay, which, I guess you have to try and do that. Otherwise, I would have just slowly been losing. So I grabbed that pawn. Now, let's go back a little bit here. So the best move would have been to retreat, blockade the pawn. Instead, I capture, attacking the rook. The rook moves. First, they should have pushed that pawn instead. So here, I attack the other rook. He steps over. This is an inaccuracy. Apparently, once again, it would have been best to push that passed pawn. So if my opponent learns anything from this game, I would say one of the biggest lessons is if you have a passed pawn like that, especially with two rooks and a queen versus, my only queen and rook, it would be a little hard for me to stop this pawn. So he probably should have just pushed that, and it would have caused all kinds of problems. All right. So we have this knight move, a mistake. The computer does not like that move at all. What should I have played? Did I just overlook that? I guess I could have played f4 here. But even then, white would have been winning. So after f4, I guess they're not winning as much. The best thing here would be, what? Queen to e2. We take the knight. So if they go here, I take the knight. They recapture towards the center. And then what? They recommend knight to c5. But even then, it probably wouldn't have been enough. So in the game, we have knight jumping forward, a mistake. It looks like the best thing here would have been for one of my rooks, one of my opponent's rooks to just capture here. So instead, we have a check, an inaccuracy. He should have just captured the pawn on d6. I block with the bishop, the best move. So what do they recommend now? Oh, wow. This move here, rook to f7, attacking my queen. After that, they recommend rook to d8, and it just would not be looking too good for me. my opponent would pretty much be winning. But instead, this move was played. A mistake. It says it's just a missed opportunity that e7, that would have been a crushing move, pushing that pawn forward and attacking. So once again, I would recommend to my opponent, definitely think about pushing that passed pawn when it's that close to promotion. All right, so after this is just a mistake. I grabbed the rook, and black is pretty much winning after this. So here, my opponent does find the best move according to the... Well, now it's saying that's not the best move, that it would have been better to just capture with the queen. So I guess we could look at that. If we have capture, they recommend I capture, and what next? Rook captures, and then the b3 pawn starts marching up the board. Let's see, b3, they recommend getting behind the passed pawn, but now we have b2 backed up by the bishop. What now? Knight to e2, getting ready for that knight to... Well, I guess he can't go there. Man, I guess the knight could reposition there. Also, they're saying that, or f3 would be better. But at this point, they're saying that white would be winning. So the game did not go in that direction. We had this capture. So if I go back a little bit, we'll see where the mistake happened. So my opponent here should have just pushed the passed pawn. Instead, he goes after this, forgetting that it's no longer protected. So my queen grabs it. He grabs the knight, which is an inaccuracy. I play an inaccuracy as well. So apparently it would have been better to play that instead. And then what? Queen to c1, protecting the back rank. And what now? We would just grab the knight, and I would be ahead. A knight for one pawn, it looks like. So after capture, we have... Oh, and I would be able to grab this. So then, yeah, I would just be ahead by a whole knight. And I have this passed pawn over here on the queen side. So instead, after this move, my opponent captures with the queen. So apparently there was a better move that I kind of overlooked. So after I go here, the best move would have been to move the queen out of the way and counterattack that rook. So after bishop takes c5, we have queen. Oh, they recommend the check first. So I guess we could take a look at that. Check. Queen to e7. They would have to take the rook now. But it looks like... They recommend that I just push that pawn forward. I mean, I could just go ahead and capture this as well. Oh, because if I do that, he'll just grab this. So let's look at the best move. We push forward. If he takes, I go here. He has to stop that. They recommend queen to e1, which also protects this. Now they have some crazy moves like that. And I don't know about that. I mean, the king would have to capture because this pawn's ready to promote. So if the king captures, we have queen to c5. Oh, and then I would be able to come up here. So what do they say is best? Queen to h4. Huh. They're saying queen up here would be best. Oh, I guess I could try and, I don't know, get some repositioning thing going on here. Oh, and I'm threatening to go there. All right, let's look at how the game continued. The final, we'll go back a few moves before the mistake happened. So we get into this position and they capture, well, first a check, block, and then a mistake of giving up the rook. So I capture, he captures the fork, and my opponent just, kind of made a mistake here. The game went on pretty long, and, unfortunately, he just blundered here at the end. So after the check, I get my king out of the line of fire. He attacks my queen. I attack the pawn, so he pushes that forward. But now I just block, and here's where my opponent resigned. Because if he tried to go here, I could either just move there and protect, or I could move my king up, and protect that way. So that's how the game ended. Kind of interesting. My opponent, he did play strong there until the end. So, it says he's a 1084 player. That's still a provisional rating, so he's higher than that. And, tomorrow I'll have a puzzle video. And the day after, stay tuned for round 2. I'll show what happened in the second round, where I actually played a 1600 rated player. So, stay tuned for that. It was also quite an interesting game. All right. Well, feel free to leave comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching, and have a super chess day.